The sleeper bus from Saigon screeched lightly as it stopped at the Da Lat station. The fog was still thick, and the morning light filtered through the rows of pine trees. Quang stepped off the bus, took a deep breath, and the cold air rushed into his lungs, making him shiver but also feel refreshed. He pulled along his black suitcase, its wheels rattling against the damp tiles. He looked like an ordinary man, denim jacket, sneakers, a thin face. Glancing around, he muttered, finally here. Da Lat really feels so different from Saigon. A motorbike taxi driver nearby greeted him. Where are you headed? Quang checked his phone screen, showed it to the driver. I rented a house on Tran Kai Kap Street. No.7, can you take me there? The driver squinted at the address, then nodded. Ah, that house? Let's go. It's not far. Quang hopped on the bike, suitcase resting by his feet. The road sloped upward, lined with old villas, some still inhabited, others abandoned with dust-covered windows. The damp air carried the faint scent of soil and pine resin. He asked, "It's really quiet around here." Huh? The driver chuckled. That's Da Lat, always up and down the hills. The place you rented is a bit special, too. Quang raised an eyebrow. Special how? The driver hesitated for a few seconds before brushing it off. Well, it's at the end of a slope. Not many people pass by, but it's spacious and cool. The bike stopped in front of a two-story house, pale yellow with a red tiled roof. Its iron gate slightly rusted. A small sign with the number 7 hung on the gate. The slope in front of the house was empty. Only birds chirping could be heard. Quang stood with his hands on his hips, gazing up. A cold breeze brushed the back of his neck, prompting him to zip his jacket higher. He smiled softly and whispered, "Here it is, time to start a new life." He paid the driver, then rolled his suitcase to the gate. The key had been sent in an envelope the day before. As he slid it into the lock, a faint creaking sound echoed from inside the yard, like a wooden door trembling. Quang paused for a moment, then shook his head, convincing himself it was just the wind. The lock clicked open, and the gate groaned. Taking a deep breath, Quang pulled his suitcase into the yard. The brick path leading to the front door was covered with fallen pine needles. He set down his suitcase, stretched, then chuckled to himself. "Quang, from now on, you're officially a Da Lat local." In front of him, house number 7 stood silently, as if waiting for its new guest to step inside. Quang had just set his suitcase down in the living room when a knock sounded from the gate outside. He turned back and walked out. A petite woman in her 50s, her hair neatly tied in a bun, wearing a gray wool coat, was waiting. She smiled kindly. "Hello, you must be Quang, right? I'm Mrs. Hua, the owner of this house." Quang greeted her politely. "Yes, hello ma'am, I just arrived this morning. The house is beautiful. I saw the photos online, but being here in person, it feels completely different." Mrs. Hua stepped into the yard, her eyes scanning around as if checking things. "Well, the house is old, but it's spacious, airy, and quiet. Make yourself at home. If anything breaks, just let me know. I'll have someone fix it." Quang nodded. "Yes, thank you, ma'am." From her bag, Mrs. Hua took out another set of keys and handed them to him. "Here's the key to the storage room in the back. Keep it. Oh, and to the left lives a neighbor named Lan. She's young, very nice, sells flowers at the market. If you need anything, you can ask her too." Just as she finished, a voice called out from beyond the fence. "Oh, someone new rented the house." "Mrs. Hua?" Quang turned his head. A woman around 28, her long hair tied neatly back, wearing a brown coat, held a basket of hydrangeas in her hands. She had a bright smile, though her eyes seemed to study him closely. Mrs. Hua waved. "This is Lan. Lan, this is Quang, the new tenant." Lan tilted her head with a gentle smile. "Nice to meet you. I live right next door. If you need anything, just call me. I leave early for the market in the morning and come back in the afternoon." Quang scratched his head, a bit awkward. "Ah, nice to meet you too. I just got here and don't know anyone yet. I hope you can help me out." Lan set her basket of flowers on the step, resting a hand on her hip. "Are you living here alone?" "Yes, alone. I work freelance, so I moved here for the peace and quiet. Lan smiled, her eyes glimmering. Dalat is peaceful indeed, but sometimes it can get a little lonely. House number 7 hasn't had anyone living in it for quite a while. Her words made Kwong pause. Curious, he asked, so, has anyone lived here before? Lan went silent for a moment, then shrugged. Yes, but they only stayed a short time before leaving. Probably because they couldn't handle the cold weather. Mrs. Wah quickly cut in, waving her hand. Yes, that's all. Anyway, that's the past. Now that Kwong is here, the house has life again. And that's a good thing. Kwong smiled, trying to brush off the vague feeling in Lan's tone. He glanced at her basket of flowers and said, "Those flowers are beautiful. Do you sell them at the market?" Lan's bright smile returned. "Yes, come by tomorrow. I'll give you some flowers to brighten up the house." The conversation went on for a few more minutes. Mrs. Wah gave some final instructions before leaving. Lan picked up her basket of flowers. But before walking away, she turned back and glanced at the old wooden door of the house. Her expression hard to read. Kwong stood alone in the yard, a flicker of curiosity stirring inside him. He muttered to himself, "People say Dalat is full of strange stories. But it's just rumors, right?" In the afternoon, Dalat's air turned chilly, with mist drifting beyond the fence. Kwong sat cross-legged on the living room floor, opened his suitcase, and began arranging his belongings. He muttered to himself, "Guess I'll have to hit the market tomorrow to buy some pots and pans." At home everything was already there. But now living alone, I realize how much I'm missing. His phone buzzed, the screen flashing a friend's number from Saigon. Kwong answered, folding clothes as he spoke. "Hello? Yeah, I've arrived. The house is fine, spacious. Rent's reasonable. Yeah, a bit cold, but manageable." His friend laughed loudly over the line. "Good then. Living there, you'll have lots of inspiration to write. Just don't forget to come back to Saigon once in a while." Kwong chuckled, ending the call. "Got it." He kept unpacking. When he opened the wooden wardrobe in the bedroom, he froze for a moment. In the bottom drawer lay a red wool scarf, neatly folded but dusty. He picked it up, thoughtful. Must have been left behind by the last tenant. Kwong set it aside, planning to ask Mrs. Wah tomorrow if she wanted it back. As dusk fell, he turned on the living room light, the warm yellow glow making the space feel much cozier. He opened his laptop and played some soft music. The atmosphere was peaceful, quiet. While working, a faint clack came from the back area. Kwong paused, looked up. Silence. He reassured himself. Probably just the old wooden door. Wind blowing against it. He got up and went to check. The storage room door was ajar, swaying slightly in the draft. He shut it, slid the latch, then went back inside. A little later, Lan arrived with a small bouquet of hydrangeas. She stood by the fence, calling out, "Mr. Kwong." Kwong, delighted, hurried out. "You came by?" Lan held out the flowers. "A gift. A new house should have flowers, it'll feel brighter." Kwong accepted them gratefully. "That's so kind. Thank you." Lan smiled, her eyes wandering around the living room behind him. "Are you getting used to the place? Living alone must feel a bit cold." Kwong scratched his head. "It's fine. Though the storage room in the back hasn't been opened in a while, it's really musty." Lan hesitated briefly, then spoke softly. "If you don't need it, maybe don't go there too often. Damp places can make you sick." Kwong nodded. "Yeah, I was thinking the same." They chatted a bit about the flower market and Dalat food. Soon after, Lan excused herself and left. Kwong placed the flowers in a glass vase. The deep purple petals lit up the whole room. He took a long breath, feeling everything more pleasant. That evening, he cooked instant noodles and ate alone. Outside, the fog thickened, street lights casting hazy golden halos through the window. The silence was so deep, only the clinking of his spoon against the bowl could be heard. In his mind, the image of the red scarf still lingered, but he shook his head, telling himself, "Just overthinking. First day here and already imagining things? Come on." Kwong switched on the night lamp, preparing for his very first night in house number 7. The Dalat night was chilly. with mist seeping through the cracks in the door, making the air inside damp. Kwong lay on the wooden bed, pulling the blanket up to his chest. The digital clock on the nightstand read 12:17. He tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep as easily as he thought he would. The house was unfamiliar, and the silence was unnerving. In Saigon, no matter how late, there was always the sound of traffic. Here, it was so quiet that even the beat of his own heart felt loud. Kwong muttered to himself, "Guess I'll have to buy a radio tomorrow, just to have some noise. This silence feels creepy." He shut his eyes, trying to relax. A few minutes later, a faint sound broke the stillness. Creak, creak. Kwong's eyes snapped open, and he sat up. The sound came from the living room. It was like a wooden chair with someone sitting down on it. He swallowed hard, sitting still for a few seconds. His mind quickly searched for a reasonable explanation. Probably just an old house. The wind makes the wood expand. But then, the creak came again, louder this time, slower, as if someone was shifting their weight on the chair. Kwong furrowed his brows, straining to listen. The air felt thick, cold. Taking a deep breath, he decided to get out of bed. He switched on his phone flashlight, the weak beam casting faint light across the walls. Quietly, he slid open the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The house was swallowed in darkness, with only a few streaks of yellow light slipping in from the street lamp outside. He moved slowly toward the living room. Each step on the wooden floor groaned beneath his feet, amplifying his unease. At the doorway, he swept the flashlight around. On the wooden table, Lan's hydrangea bouquet sat neatly in its vase. The chair across from the table, the very spot where the sound had come from, stood still. Nothing unusual about it. Kwong swallowed again and walked all the way in. He bent down, touched the side of the chair, and gave it a gentle shake. It creaked, yes, but the sound was sharper, quicker, not the same as before, the sound of weight settling into it. He stood frozen for a few seconds, his heart racing. Then he forced a smile at himself. All right, must have been my imagination. I'll just oil the hinges next time. He turned off the flashlight, returned to his room, and slid under the blanket, pulling it up to his chin. But before sleep could take him, the sound came again, this time, clearer, as if someone had dropped heavily into the chair, then began rocking slowly. Creak, creak, creak. Kwong's eyes widened. He held his breath. The darkness in the house seemed thicker now, swallowing everything. He didn't dare step out again. He just lay there, ears straining. The sound of the chair continued, slow and steady. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Silence filled the room once more. Kwong stayed rigid beneath the blanket, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. He didn't sleep at all that night. The Pine Green Cafe sat at the bottom of the slope, its wooden walls painted brown, roof tiles covered in moss. Inside, the air was rich with the aroma of freshly roasted coffee, while the soft strains of Trin's music drifted out. Kwong walked in and chose a table on the veranda, where he could look down into the misty green valley below. He ordered a glass of iced black coffee, leaned back in his chair, and breathed in the scent of the freshly brewed drink. The peaceful atmosphere eased his mind. A moment later, a woman's voice came from the next table. "You seem new around here?" Kwong looked up. A woman, maybe close to 40, sat neatly dressed in a simple but refined way. She smiled warmly, her eyes glancing toward him. "I come here often, so when I saw a new face, I thought I'd ask." Kwong nodded politely. "Yes, I just moved in yesterday. I'm staying at house number 7, up the slope." The woman froze briefly, then quickly regained her smile. But Kwong noticed that moment of hesitation. She spoke again, her tone slightly uncertain. "Oh, number 7, it's a nice house. But no one's lived there for quite a while." Kwong furrowed his brows, recalling Lan's vague remark earlier that morning. He asked directly, "Why's that?" "I think the place is solid. Clean, nothing inconvenient about it." The woman set down her coffee cup and looked at him intently. "You'll find out yourself. People say, houses left empty too long grow cold. Strange things happen." Kwong forced a chuckle, keeping his voice calm. "Probably just rumors. I'm used to living alone, so I'm not worried. She shrugged slightly and said no more. Just then, Lan walked into the cafe. Spotting Kwong, she beamed and came straight over. Mr. Kwong, how's the coffee? Does it suit your taste? Kwong laughed, waving her over. Perfect, just the way I like it. Lan sat beside him, glanced briefly at the other woman, then quickly steered the conversation elsewhere. Carefully avoiding the subject of house number 7, Kwong noticed her deliberate shift, but chose not to press. In the middle of their chat, Kwong's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Mr. Kwong, in that house. At night don't open the living room window. Remember this. His heart skipped, pulse racing. He glanced around the cafe, trying to guess who could have sent it. Lan noticed his uneasy expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Kwong hurriedly slipped the phone back into his pocket and forced a smile. "Oh, nothing. Just some spam message." But inside, the unease was steadily growing. Late in the afternoon, mist from the valley began to creep up the slope. Kwong carried the bag of coffee he had just bought back to the house. Number 7 stood silent, the sunset casting its glow across the damp, blotched yellow walls, making it look far older than it had in the morning. He opened the gate and stepped into the yard. Pine needles covered the path. Wind slipped through the cracks of the window, producing a faint creak. Kwong shivered, recalling the message from earlier that day. At night, don't open the living room window. He tried to calm himself. Just scare stories. People always spread rumors about rental houses. Inside, the house was pitch dark. Kwong switched on the light, the yellow glow spilling onto the ceiling, illuminating the wide but sparsely furnished living room. An old wooden sofa set, a dusty glass table, a few paintings on the wall. The air carried a musty, damp smell. He placed the coffee bag on the table and pushed the window open for some air. A gust of cold wind swept in, carrying the scent of pine resin. Kwong breathed it in with relief. But only seconds later, the back of his neck chilled. It felt as though someone outside in the yard was staring right at him. He spun around. Beyond the window lay the empty yard strewn with leaves. Distant pine trees swaying. No one was there. Kwong let out a nervous chuckle. You're jumpy. Kwong, it's just early evening. He shut the window and latched it. But as he turned, he caught sight of something on the fogged glass, a clear imprint of fingers. Thin and long. He froze, swallowing hard, pressing his own hand against the glass. He compared. The imprint was smaller, slimmer, like that of a woman. Or a child. He stepped back, palms clammy. In his head, the warning echoed, at night. Don't open the living room window. Just then, his phone buzzed again, a new message from the unknown number. You just opened it, didn't you? Kwong's entire body went numb. He dropped the phone onto the table, his heart pounding violently. In the dead stillness of the house, the wind whistling through the cracks sounded like someone softly laughing. Panicked, he hurried to lock every window in the house, pulled the curtains shut, turned on more lights. Yet even with the golden glow filling every corner, the sensation of being watched didn't fade. Kwong sat down on the chair, staring at his silent phone. The same question spun in his head. Who's messaging me? And how do they know exactly what I just did? Outside, pine needles pattered to the ground. From the living room, the glass reflected his trembling figure, blurred with a fleeting shadow that slipped past. Night fell quickly in Dalat. Outside the window, the fog thickened into a white curtain, blanketing the entire slope. Inside, Kwong sat silently at the table, his cup of hot tea long gone cold. He no longer dared to look at his phone. That message clung to his mind like a shadow. Who could possibly have seen him at the very moment he opened the window? The thought made his skin prickle with goosebumps. To calm himself, Kwong turned on soft music from the Bluetooth speaker. The husky but warm voice of Con Lee filled the room. He stretched out on the sofa, pulled a thin blanket over himself, and tried to drift into sleep. The wall clock ticked steadily. After a while, Kwong slipped into a restless slumber. Suddenly, he jolted awake. The room was utterly still, only the sound of wind seeping through the cracks. But strangely, the music had stopped at some point. Kwong sat upright, his heart pounding. He glanced at the clock, 1:45 a.m. Then he heard it. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was clear, heavy and slow, like footsteps on the tiled floor of the living room. They came from right beside the sofa, then stopped. Kwong held his breath, every muscle frozen. His first thought was an intruder. He grabbed the wooden stick beside the table, carefully rising to his feet. Who's there? His voice cracked, trembling. No reply, only the sound again, this time from the far corner of the room, near the very window he had opened earlier that evening. Thump, thump. Kwong raised the stick in that direction. The dim yellow light barely reached part of the wall. Everything looked still, yet he was certain he'd heard footsteps against the tiles. He backed up until his spine pressed against the sofa. Then, on the fogged window pane, he caught a glimpse of a figure outside, slender, tall, thin. He blinked in shock. The figure vanished, leaving only the misty condensation. Suddenly, the phone on the table buzzed violently. Kwong snatched it up, his heart nearly leaping from his chest. A new message appeared from the unknown number. Don't go outside, they haven't left. Kwong froze, hands trembling uncontrollably. He dropped back onto the sofa, eyes locked on the misty glass window. Outside, the wind rustled through the pines, mingling with the faint, lingering thump, thump, as if the footsteps were still circling somewhere inside the room. Morning light slipped through the curtains, casting streaks across the mottled ceiling. Kwong opened his eyes, his mind foggy after a sleepless night. The memory of footsteps, the chilling messages, they still clung to his chest, making every breath feel heavy. He sat up, scanning the living room. Everything looked untouched, nothing out of place. The window remained closed, latch secured, yet on the misted glass, the imprint of a small hand from the night before was still there. Hurriedly, Kwong wiped it away with a cloth, as if erasing evidence. He muttered to himself, "No, I must have imagined it. People don't just appear and vanish." He brewed a strong cup of black coffee, gulped down several swallows, trying to steady himself. Only one thought filled his mind. He had to see Lan, the girl connected to house number 7. Around 9 in the morning, Kwong drove down to the city center. Dalat by day was bustling, crisp and cool, yet the unease from last night shadowed him the entire way. He found the small cafe Lan had once mentioned. Inside, Lan sat at a corner table, a laptop in front of her, a cup of hot tea at her side. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, Kwong, what brings you here so early?" Kwong sat across from her, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "Lan, I need to ask you about house number 7. Lan set her laptop aside, eyes fixed on him. "You're not used to it yet? The house is a bit old. Maybe you find it inconvenient?" Kwong lowered his voice, deliberate. "Last night, I heard footsteps, clear as day, sometimes right by the sofa, sometimes in the corner. I even saw a figure outside the window." Lan froze for a moment, pressing her lips together. Her eyes shifted away, as if weighing what to say. Leaning forward, Kwong pressed urgently, "Tell me the truth, Lan, that house, what's wrong with it?" Lan exhaled, her hands clasping together. After a long pause, she finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper, as though afraid someone might overhear. "Actually, number 7 isn't mine. It belonged to a cousin of mine. She passed away 3 years ago, in that very living room." A chill swept through Kwong, his spine rigid. He gripped the chair tightly. "She passed away how?" Lan bit her lip, staring down at her teacup, her voice sinking lower. "They say she was sitting by the window and quietly slipped away. Neighbors claim that ever since. At night, they often hear footsteps in the house." Kwong sat frozen, his heart sinking like a stone. The things he had experienced last night, the warning message, "Don't open the living room window," all of it now connected in a horrifying way. He leaned back, drawing in a deep breath. Outside, the morning sun shone golden and bright. But to him, house number 7 had already become nothing more than a black void, swallowing every shred of peace. Late in the afternoon, Kwong returned to house number 7. Mist from the valley drifted up the slope, droplets sliding down the pine needles and falling with soft taps onto the tiled roof. The cool air seeped into his skin, but inside him there was only a heavy, indescribable weight. He stopped his bike, standing before the rusty gate, eyes fixed on the living room window. Lan's words from the morning lingered. She passed away right there. A shiver crawled up his spine, but he forced a deep breath and stepped inside. The house remained silent. Kwong turned on the lights, the yellow glow spreading across the stained, weathered walls. He set his bag down on the table, opened his laptop, and tried to focus on unfinished work. The clacking of keys echoed faintly, blending with the steady tick of the wall clock. Around 10 p.m., his phone buzzed. A message from Lan. "Are you alright? If it feels uncomfortable, you can stay at my place for the night." Kwong typed back, forcing calm. "I'm fine. Thanks, Lan. I just need to get used to it." He switched off the phone and reclined on the sofa. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks. The curtains swayed gently, letting shadows crawl slowly into the room. Suddenly, from the corner of the living room, came a sound, creak, like a wooden chair being sat on. Kwong shot upright, eyes locking on the chair across from him. It was empty, no one there. His heart thumped wildly. He muttered, "No, just the wind." He walked over and pressed on the chair. It didn't budge, no sound at all. Swallowing hard, he turned back toward the sofa. But then, a whisper brushed right by his ear, soft, yet unmistakably clear. "Don't sit there." Kwong jerked up, every hair on his body standing on end. His eyes darted around the room, sweat beading on his forehead. Nothing. The lights were still on. Everything silent. He edged toward the door, heart hammering, but just as his hand touched the latch, the voice came again, firmer this time, from directly behind him. "That chair is already taken." He spun around. The wooden chair was still empty, but it had shifted slightly backward, as if someone invisible had just leaned into it. Kwong froze, hands trembling, terror surging through him. He flung open the door and bolted outside, gulping the icy night air, chest heaving. From the thick darkness of Dalat's night, he thought he heard faint laughter, echoing from within the living room. The Dalat night cut sharp against the skin. White fog draped the slope, golden lights from houses along the road shimmering faintly through the mist. Kwong rode his motorbike to Lan's house, hands still shaking from what he had just endured. He couldn't stay in number 7 another minute. Lan opened the door, worry in her eyes. "Kwong, why are you here at this hour?" He stepped inside, gasping. I can't take it anymore. Last night there were footsteps, and tonight, a voice, whispering, right inside the living room. Lan stepped back slightly, closed her eyes as if gathering strength, then invited him in. "Sit down, calm yourself, I'll tell you the truth." Kwong sat, clutching a pillow, staring toward the window. Lan sat opposite, her voice soft. "The house wasn't mine. It belonged to my cousin, who passed away 3 years ago. Since then, no one dares live there long. They've heard footsteps, whispers, many believe it's her spirit." Kwong's grip on the pillow tightened, his head spinning. "But why is she still there? All I did was open the window." Lan lowered her head, her tone heavy. "She lived there for many years. At night, she often sat in the living room by that window. The living might not know, but sometimes spirits keep their habits." Kwong swallowed hard, a cold shiver running down his back. "What should I do? I don't think I can sleep anymore." Lan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Just don't open the window at night. Don't sit in that old chair. And treat it as something normal. Don't stare. Don't call out. She doesn't harm anyone. She only lingers out of habit." Kwong nodded, still trembling. "I understand, but I never thought one house could haunt me this much." Lan smiled faintly. "Often, what scares us isn't the ghost itself, it's the unexpected. Their habits remain. If you live in harmony with it, the fear will fade." Kwong exhaled, tension easing slightly. He felt safer with Lan nearby, though the echo of the past nights still clung to him. Outside, the fog thickened, golden lights dissolving into the white haze. Inside Kwong's heart, the story of house number 7 remained unfinished, like a mystery waiting for him to face. The doll at night was wrapped in fog. House number 7 so silent that every breath Kwong took echoed through the room. After returning from Lan's place, he decided to try a normal night. Just as she had advised, no opening windows, no sitting in the old chair. He lay on the bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. His heart still raced, hands trembling slightly as he pulled the blanket up to his chin. Outside, the wind hissed through the cracks, but the room itself remained still. Kwong drew in a deep breath, telling himself, just endure one quiet night. Then, the yellow glow from the ceiling light stretched across the living room, highlighting the old chair in the corner. Glancing at it, he noticed a faint mark on the seat, as though someone had just sat down. Holding his breath, Kwong stepped into the living room. He pulled down the curtain and turned the lights brighter. Inspecting the chair carefully, he found nothing, only a thin layer of dust and a few tangled fibers. He exhaled in relief, but when he turned around, the lamp's reflection cast the chair's shadow on the wooden floor. For a fleeting moment, the shadow shifted noticeably to one side, as though something had just moved. Kwong flinched, backing up, his palms icy cold, his heart pounded, his whole body trembling. He whispered to himself, just a shadow, just a shadow. But as he lowered the curtain and prepared to return to bed, a soft breath whispered behind him, clear, intimate. Kwong, he froze, paralyzed, not daring to turn. The silence grew so thick that his ears caught every beat of his heart. For a long time, there was nothing more, only the wind outside slapping against the walls. He crept back to bed, eyes wide open against the ceiling. One quiet night, but no longer ordinary. House number 7 held another presence, silent and watchful, waiting for his next move. At dawn, Kwong sat on the sofa, sipping hot coffee. The faint breath and shifting chair from the night before had kept him awake. He opened his laptop, determined to dig into the history of House number 7. Typing House number 7 Dalton's Lat into the search bar, he found countless old articles and forum posts, stories of footsteps, ghostly figures at night, people hearing a woman's whisper, tenants leaving after only a few nights out of fear. Kwong frowned, muttering as he read, impossible, just coincidences. He printed several pages, planning to question the older neighbors. As he packed his things, his phone buzzed. A message from Lan. Do you have time today? I know some neighbors who can tell you more about the house. Kwong quickly replied, yes, I'll come after 10. Around 11, he met Lan. Together, they walked down the slope, visiting nearby homes. An elderly woman in her 70s, petite and slow-moving, shared her story. That house belonged to your cousin's aunt. She lived alone. At night, she often sat in the living room by the window, sometimes talking to no one. Kwong glanced at Lan, incredulous. Really? Did anyone actually see it? The old woman nodded slowly, her eyes distant. Of course, footsteps, a figure, sometimes frail, sometimes heavy. Everyone who stayed there heard it. Lan added softly, I've heard the same. My aunt died suddenly. Since then, the house has been empty. Every tenant before you left after only a few nights. Kwong swallowed hard, shivering. Why does it have to be this way? I just wanted a quiet place. The old woman looked at him, nodding. Be careful in that house. Kwong, they mean no harm, but they keep to their habits. At night, don't open the windows. Don't sit in the old chair. Kwong stayed silent, memories of last night flashing, the shifting shadow, the whisper, the breath. When he returned home, a heavier dread settled over him. These weren't just random occurrences anymore. He realized that house number 7 wasn't merely a place to live. It was a link between the present and the past. Between the living and something else. Standing in the living room, he stared at the old chair. This time, no figure appeared, no breath stirred, yet the weight of unseen eyes lingered, forcing his heart to race. He muttered to himself, I have to find a way to live with this, or learn to coexist with them. Night descended, fog spilled into the yard, street lamps glowing faintly like veiled lanterns through the haze. House number 7 stood waiting, silent and patient, for Kwong's next step. Night fell, and Kwong sat on the sofa, a cup of tea in hand. Lan's warning still echoed in his mind: don't open the window. Don't sit in the old chair. Yet his curiosity gnawed at him, urging him to test just how much the house truly existed. He stood and walked into the living room, staring at the old chair. His heartbeat quickened. Kwong reached out and nudged it lightly. The chair trembled faintly, as if responding to an invisible breath. Just a mechanical reaction, he muttered, though his voice shook. Then, from the corner of the room, came a faint clink, like something small dropping onto the floor. Kwong frowned, bent down, and picked it up, just an old scrap of paper. Unfolding it, he found words hastily scribbled in faded ink: "Don't disturb me." His eyes widened. The paper was brittle, dust clinging to its edges. But the writing was still clear. He glanced around, no one there. Must have been left behind long ago. He whispered, though the chill in his chest deepened. Before he could steady himself, a whisper came again, closer this time, right by his ear. "Kwong, why don't you listen?" He spun around, trembling. No one, only the yellow glow of the lamp casting light on the stained walls. His pulse pounded. His hand gripped the door latch, the feeling of being watched pressing harder and harder. After a few moments of silence, Kwong decided to conduct a small experiment. Slowly, he dragged the old chair into the center of the room, intending to sit, but the instant he touched it, a blast of icy wind surged from the closed night window. Rattling the glass, the chair stiffened under his grip, as if an unseen force resisted. "No," he staggered back, breathing fast. In the lamplight, faint streaks shimmered across the seat, like the outline of a figure standing beside it. A stabbing cold crept down his spine, locking his body in place. Kwong inhaled deeply, forcing himself to whisper, "I just need to live in harmony, just need to." But then came footsteps from the kitchen, slow, deliberate, each one heavy like a drumbeat. The sound echoed through the hushed house, every step making Kwong's heart stutter. Panicked, he switched off all the lights, leapt onto the sofa, and pressed his hands to his face. The air thickened, dense and suffocating, as though the fog itself had seeped into his bones. And in that moment, Kwong understood. House number 7 wasn't just a place to live, it was a living presence. Watching every move, every decision he made, his breath came in ragged bursts. As the realization struck him, from now on, every step inside this house would have to be taken with caution. Kwong sat slumped on the sofa, clutching a pillow. The night's chill, the footsteps from the kitchen, the whispers still echoing in his ears made his heart pound. Yet a reckless thought stirred within him: if he reached out first, could he truly understand house number 7? He stood, cautiously stepping into the middle of the living room. His hands trembled as he set the old chair before him. Taking a deep breath, Kwong whispered, Who's here? I know you don't mean to hurt me, but I want to understand." Silence. The room was so quiet that his own breathing rang out. But after a few seconds, a cold gust swept past, making the curtains sway. On the old chair, the thin layer of dust rippled as though touched. Kwong swallowed hard, eyes wide, his voice shaking. If you can hear me, please let me know. I don't want to be afraid, I just want to understand." For a long moment, nothing. Then, a whisper, faint yet clear. "Understand?" Kwong froze, trembling all over. And then the chair began to rock lightly. As if in response, he drew in a sharp breath, caught between fear and curiosity. "My name is Kwong," his voice wavered. "I won't disturb you. I just want to talk." A soft breath echoed in the room, mingled with the sharp resinous scent of pine that always clung to house number 7. It was both present and distant, making Kwong feel as if he were standing at the border between the real and the unreal. He backed up and sat on the sofa opposite the chair, watching the shifting dust. He whispered, "I'll listen. I want to understand your habits." Suddenly, a sound at the window. A streak of condensation bloomed across the glass, shaped like a slender hand pressing against it before vanishing. Kwong stiffened, his gaze locked on the fading mark. He realized then, house number 7 was no longer just a shelter. It was a living presence with history, with routine, with its own kind of life. And now, he was stepping into that world, daring to test the boundary between the living and the lingering dead. The night thickened. Kwong remained on the sofa, the dim yellow light casting broken shadows across the wooden floor. His heart still hammered, but this time it was laced with anticipation as much as fear. He knew the spirit of house number 7 was watching his every move. Then, the old chair in the center of the room trembled. Kwong sprang up, hands shaking, eyes fixed on it. The thin film of dust stirred again, as though touched by an invisible hand. I won't harm you," he stammered. "Please, appear, so I can understand." Silence. And then, at the living room window, a figure emerged, slender, tall, its face obscured. It stood still, leaning faintly toward the chair. Kwong held his breath, eyes wide. The shadow moved slowly, each step soundless yet heavy, the air around him dropping in temperature until his skin prickled with goosebumps. "It's me, Kwong. I'm not afraid," he forced the words out, though his voice quaked. The figure halted at the chair, its form blurred, fading into the yellow light. A slim hand rose, pointing at the chair. Before retreating, another gust swept the room, carrying the resinous pine scent that clung to the house. Kwong stumbled back, pressing against the sofa, his heart slamming in his chest. Yet along with the terror came an uncanny harmony. The spirit wasn't hostile, only intent on reminding him of its habits, its history. He exhaled shakily, body trembling. I understand now. I'll respect you." The shadow dissolved, leaving the room quiet once more. Kwong curled back onto the sofa, hugging his pillow, his breath slowly steadying beneath the amber glow of the lamp. The night dragged on, but for the first time, he felt that presence wasn't entirely dreadful. House number 7 still stood, silent and brooding, but now Kwong had stepped into its world, a relationship of fear and fascination, opening the door to new mysteries in the nights to come. The night in Dalat fell silent, mist blanketing the garden. Kwong sat on the sofa, sipping hot tea, his eyes fixed on the window. After nights of being watched, he had grown somewhat accustomed to the vague presence lingering in house number 7. Yet his instincts told him something new was about to happen. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the kitchen. Not footsteps this time, but the pop of a bottle cap. Kwong stood, eyes sharp, and walked slowly toward the kitchen. The light stretched across the floor, casting long shadows. "Who's there?" His voice was hoarse, but steadier than before. Silence, only the rustling of wind outside the window. Kwong moved closer, lifted the cupboard lid. No one. But on the counter, an old photo leaned askew, as if it had just been moved. He bent down, brushed away the dust, and discovered faint writing on the back of the photo. "If you want to understand, look carefully into the dark." His heart thumped faster. Kwong lifted his gaze toward the shadowy corner of the living room, where the old chair sat silently. He felt as though the spirit was leading him toward something. Taking a small flashlight, Kwong walked carefully to the chair, shining the beam onto the floor. He saw faint footprints, like someone had walked there, but no one was present. "It's just phenomena," he muttered, though his lips trembled. Then a whisper came. "Tonight, observe?" Kwong froze. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, then opened them wide again. A slender figure drifted past the chair. He watched every movement, stricken by both fear and curiosity. "I'm watching. I want to understand," Kwong whispered, his voice shaky yet firm. The shadow halted, responding as though it had heard. A cold draft swept through, rattling the curtains, the lamplight scattering eerie shapes across the walls. Kwong steadied his breathing, straining to observe. He realized the spirit was no longer hostile. It only wanted to remind him of the house's history, of the habits of those who once lived here. Yet something remained hidden, a secret in the darkness he was meant to uncover. Later that night, Kwong climbed the creaking wooden staircase to the attic. Above, mist filtered through a small window, scattering the flashlight's beam into strange, stretched shadows. His heart pounded with a mix of dread and anticipation. "This must be where the secret lies," he murmured, Taking careful steps. The attic door was old, its paint peeling, the handle caked in dust. Kwong pushed gently, the door groaned open, revealing a cramped little room. Inside, beneath the low ceiling, his flashlight caught old belongings, a few suitcases, wooden boxes, and on the walls, rows of blurred black and white photographs. He stepped closer, lighting the photos one by one. Each showed a family, a woman sitting before the living room window, her face indistinct, yet strangely familiar. Kwong's heart raced. He realized the footsteps, the whispers, the habits, everything was recorded here, like a living diary of the spirit who had once stayed. From downstairs, the old chair gave a faint creak. As if responding, Kwong stiffened, his eyes darting back toward it. In the dark, he thought he saw the slender figure descending the stairs, slow and gentle, as though teaching him how to respect the house. I understand now, Kwong said, voice trembling but resolute. I won't disturb you anymore. This time, the soft breath that filled the air no longer sounded like a threat. A cold gust brushed past him, but it carried peace, a sense of acceptance and harmony. Kwong stood still, surveying the attic, the mementos, the photographs, and he understood. House number 7 wasn't haunting him. It was safeguarding memories, habits, and the lives of those who had once passed through. He exhaled deeply, a wave of relief rising within him. The Dalat night was still cold, but in his heart, a quiet calm had begun. House number 7 was no longer a place of fear. It had become a place where he was learning to respect and live alongside the spirits preserved within its memory. The night grew deep. Kwong returned to the living room, the old chair still standing quietly under the soft yellow light. His heartbeat was steadier now, no longer frantic like before. He knew this would be the last time he faced the faint presence inside the house. I understand you now, Kwong whispered, his voice gentle, as if speaking to an old friend he hadn't seen in years. I'll live in harmony. I won't disturb you anymore. A light breeze swept through. The curtains stirred, but this time the air wasn't freezing cold. A shadow gradually appeared before the old chair. Clearer now, slender, still, but no longer frightening. Kwong, the soft breath echoed, more like a reminder, yet filled with peace. He nodded, slowly stepping closer to the chair. With just one look, the shadow seemed to respond with a tender gesture, its faint hand lifting as if to wave. Kwong felt a strange connection. This wasn't an attempt to frighten him, but a reminder, a message about memory and respect. Thank you, he murmured. He bowed his head, laying a hand on the old chair. His heart washed in calm. The shadow faded into the air, leaving only the warm glow of the lamp and serene silence. Kwong walked toward the window, inhaling the night air of Dalat. The mist was thick, but his chest felt lighter than ever. House number 7 still stood there, quiet, but no longer haunted with dread. It was a silent witness to memories and the spirits who once lived within its walls. Kwong smiled, for the first time feeling harmony between the present and the past, between the living and those who had passed on. He turned away from the old chair, climbed the attic stairs, and looked once more at the keepsakes, the old photographs, and the familiar space. A sense of closure washed over him, not heavy, but filled with peace. The night in Dalat drifted on, fog spreading across the yard, the golden light glinting against the walls, reflecting a scene both tranquil and mysterious. Kwong knew that from now on, house number 7 would no longer haunt him. It would remain only as a living memory, a lesson in patience, respect, and harmony. At dawn, Dalat's gentle sunlight slipped through the thin mist, blanketing the tiled roof and rustling pine branches. Kwong stood on the porch, gazing at house number 7 for the last time. The house was still old, its walls cracked, but now it no longer carried a sinister weight. Peace filled his heart. He drew in a deep breath, brushing his hand across the weathered wooden door. The memories of the night replayed in his mind, the whispers, the footsteps, the shadow, and the acceptance, the harmony he had finally reached. Goodbye, Kwong whispered, his eyes lingering on the house. Thank you for teaching me how to live with the past. He turned away, walking down the slope, Mist wrapped around the stone steps. Golden light spilling from a nearby window across the road. His heart felt light, as though he had shed an invisible burden. The wooden steps creaked beneath his feet, but the sound no longer carried fear. Kwong smiled, realizing that house number 7 was nothing more than a keeper of memories and the spirits who had once been there. It no longer haunted him, only silence and peace remained. As he descended the hill, the morning mist slowly dissolved under the rising sun. Kwong breathed steadily, feeling the calm rhythm of Dalat's life surrounding him. Deep inside, he knew every mystery had been unraveled, but the memories of house number 7 would remain a part of him forever, a story both haunting and gentle. The house stood there, silent amid mist, light, and shadow intertwined, waiting for other footsteps someday. But this time, it would remain only as a place of memory and harmony.